That's weird. Looks like the game's on here early. Doesn't come out for another few days. What's the worst that could happen? Am I right? Whoa, what's going on, guys? Please, I won't play the game early. I'll box up the system. Please, I'll do anything. I'll give it back to you. Wait, what are you doing with that chainsaw? Don't. No, please, don't. Fuck! Where the hell am I? What the hell happened to my arm?
It's me, Mario. Thank you!
Now, before we get into Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, we need to go back and look at Breath of the Wild and how much that changed Zelda and gaming as we know it today. Also in this video, I will be avoiding major story spoilers after the tutorial island. In the vast landscape of gaming, there are titles that come along once in a generation, reshaping the very foundation upon which the medium stands. One game emerged in 2017, that being Breath of the Wild, capturing the hearts and minds of players around the world. Breath of the Wild not only redefined what it meant to be a Zelda game, but forever altered the course of video game history when it comes to open worlds as we know them today. At its core, Breath of the Wild broke free from the constraints that had long defined open world adventures. It dared to challenge the status quo and set forth a new standard for not only open worlds but for Zelda games as we know today. By Nintendo, a company known for pushing boundaries, Breath of the Wild took risks few could have anticipated. With its vast, seamless open world and a seemingly infinite number of possibilities, the game handed players the keys to the kingdom of unparalleled freedom. Gone were the hand-holding tutorials and linear pathways. Instead, players were dropped into a sprawling Hyrule with the freedom to chart their own path, forging their own destiny. The game's sheer scale and attention to detail became a masterclass in world building, captivating players for hours on end. A few years after the success of Breath of the Wild, a new title was announced, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. How do you make it better than a perfect game like Breath of the Wild? A few delays later, on May 12th, 2023, we got our answer. Now, for a long time, people were calling this just $70 DLC, and that was mostly because they were saying it was the same map as the Breath of the Wild Hyrule, but with new Sky Islands. Now, I was a little bit skeptical too. How do you charge $70 for a game that pretty much is built off one that came out 6 years ago? But knowing Nintendo, I knew it wasn't going to be bad. I just had to wait and see. And boy was I taken back. After only playing a few hours of the tutorial, I was hooked. And pretty much like everyone else playing this game, I got sidetracked so fast. After completing one dungeon, I pretty much went on my own side quest journey, spending countless hours doing all of the shrines, different side quests, getting different items, and one thing in specifically I'll speak on first, the depths. One thing you need to know with Nintendo is they like to keep a lot of secrets and surprises up their sleeve for when the game is released. They spent most of the build-up for this game just talking about the Sky Islands, that nobody knew that the depths were a thing besides a few second teaser in one of the trailers. Which even then wasn't even talked about, it was just shown for a brief second. And once I found out a few hours in about the depths, I spent the next 20 hours or so exploring the depths, unlocking the light routes, and exploring other parts of it. And I was a third of the way through when I realized that the light routes matched the shrine locations above on the base map. And when you first start exploring the depths, you're in this dark place with no light except for some blue pose lighting the way for some locations. How am I supposed to solve this? I can't see anything in here. Holy shit. And be careful if you run into any gloom down there. It's this red and black goo. If you touch it for long enough, you'll lose a heart until you reach the above map or touch a light route. There is so much down in the depths that even with 105 hours of gameplay, I still have not touched all of it. Unlike the depths, something that they did show us before the game was released was the new abilities that Link has. Gone are the abilities from Breath of the Wild, and introduced 4 main ones, such as Ascend, Recall, Ultra Hand, and Fuse. Ascend lets you float up and pass through certain ceilings and terrain, and when it comes to puzzle solving, you forget you have it half the time. Huh. Didn't notice that sign there. Oh, ascend. Shit, I forgot about that. Huh, alright. The next ability is Recall. Recall lets you rewind items, which pretty much everyone has exploited just to reach higher places in certain shrines and part of the map. Then you have Ultra Hand. Ultra Hand is pretty much the main one you'll be using throughout your gameplay. Essentially all it does is help you move certain things and use that to build items. That's not it. How the f do I use this thing? I'll get it eventually. Then the last of the 4 main abilities is Fuse. Fuse is a great way to not only regain weapon durability, fusing certain items to give a weapon new life, but also using those fused weapons like a sword rock to break down boulders and other breakable areas. I can defeat Ganon in one big hit. Alright, here goes nothing. Fuse. Not what I had in mind. I think it'll do the trick though. All of these 4 abilities combined make for a whole new way of exploring Hyrule and getting through the shrine puzzles. Speaking of shrines, they are back and better than ever. There are a total of 152 shrines located throughout Hyrule. The thing I love about these new shrines is they pretty much show us certain ways we can use the abilities that we may not know how to use. One teeny tiny nitpick I do have with the shrines in this game is that some of them do feel like a hide and go seek. Once you find the shrine and walk inside, that's pretty much it. Now there's nothing wrong with that since some of them are pretty hard to get to and are a puzzle in and of themselves. Even the combat shrines have improved since the last installment. Not only showing you how to parry and fury strike and dodge certain attacks, but also showing you items that you can fuse and different mechanics to take out enemies. It really did feel like that each shrine you completed made you a better player in some aspects, whether that be combat or just puzzle solving. Speaking of puzzle solving, Tears of the Kingdom drastically improves on the dungeons that were in Breath of the Wild. In Breath of the Wild, you had 4 dungeons that were called the Divine Beasts, each of them being essentially giant metal gears where you had to navigate and explore your way to 4 terminals to turn them on, which after that, each one of them was followed by a fight with some form of a Ganon. Though they weren't horrible, they were definitely a step down from the traditional Zelda dungeons that we know and love today. And in Tears of the Kingdom, you can see them starting to bring back those traditional dungeons, albeit with a similar pass as the Divine Beast from the previous installment, but improved on in many ways. Like for example, there's a different boss for each dungeon now versus fighting a different form of Ganon. Now without going into spoilers, you have 4 main dungeons: the Wind Temple, the Fire Temple, the Water Temple, and my personal favorite, the Lightning Temple. Each one of these temples not only gives you a companion to go through and use their abilities, but they also have their own themes, unlike the previous game. It was honestly great to see the dungeons in this game versus the previous one return to form, even though it kinda does still do the same terminal objective per dungeon, just with a unique twist depending on the one that you're in. Something else I wanted to touch on without giving too much away with spoilers is the story. This time around, Nintendo has outdone themselves in the storyline department. From beginning to end, this is one of my favorite Zelda stories in the whole franchise. Even though now I really have no idea where this fits in the timeline. None at all. I also felt with the story that we had just the right amount of voice acting. One of the last things I wanted to talk about before I wrap it up is the soundtrack to Tears of the Kingdom. This game not only knows when to be calm and soothing, but it also knows when to kick ass. Some of the dungeon music's the best we've heard in the franchise, and some of the epic set pieces also have amazing music to follow with that. For example, the very last boss fight with Ganon, I'm not going to spoil it besides that, is just phenomenal. To me, after playing Tears of the Kingdom for 105 hours from beginning to end, with still a ton of side quests left to do and places I haven't even explored yet. I know I just played it and it's still so fresh in my head, but this may honestly be my favorite Zelda of all time. The only thing stopping me from saying that is the lack of more dungeons and how they just weren't that great compared to older ones in the franchise.
Oh, and don't get me started on the Korok seeds.
Let me check my map to see if I can find any. What the? What? That many? That's it. I've had enough. Burn, you little twig. You little piece of shit. The frame rate didn't bother me. The fact that Hyrule was back again in the same form with a few tweaks in different locations here and there didn't bother me. Now, I loved Breath of the Wild, but it wasn't my favorite Zelda game by a long shot. Knowing the direction that we're going with Zelda being this new open world, go wherever, whenever you want, this was the next logical step for Nintendo, and they hit a grand slam with it. And being that Ocarina of Time was my favorite game of all time, this may even be my favorite game of all time. There hasn't been a game since Ocarina of Time where I felt like a kid again. That is until this game. Now I see why Nintendo made that commercial with that grown-up playing this game. That man is all of us playing this game for the first time. That embodiment of the youth that we thought was gone until you play something like this that just brings it back. And I think that's something that's lost with gaming these days. So if you are still on the fence about playing this entry in the Legend of Zelda franchise, I would definitely give it a shot. I'm so thankful to have my arm back. After signing a few NDAs, I finally got my arm back. I need to relax or something, take the load off. Just play something. Hello? What do you mean? I signed all those NDAs and you gave me my arm back. You're still gonna sue me? What do you mean you're gonna take down the video? Wait, no!